In our headlines on this Monday, March 31st, here in South Korea, the country's worst wildfire on record is contained after more than a week of devastation, killing at least 30 people and displacing thousands of others. And South Korea today removes its longest short-selling ban on record after putting in place tougher measures against illegal transactions. Meanwhile, Myanmar is reeling in the aftermath of a devastating earthquake, measuring 7.7 on the Richter scale that appears to have killed hundreds. South Korea lost at least 30 lives amid its worst wildfire on record that lasted well over a week. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
The massive wildfires that began in Sancheong County in Gyeongsang-namdo Province and spread through nearby regions, causing the worst wildfires in South Korea's history, has been fully contained. According to forestry officials, the main fires were contained as of 1 p.m. Sunday, nearly 10 days after the initial blaze broke out on March 21st.
There were dangerous situations due to falling rocks and rocky terrain, but it seems they overcame it well and prevented further spread of fires.
The wildfires in regions of the Gyeongsang-namdo Province saw an estimated 1,858 hectares of woodland burnt, equivalent to around 2,600 football fields. The fires in Gyeongsang-bukdo Province saw about 48,000 hectares of woodland affected, equivalent to 80% of the size of Seoul. At least 30 people died, including 26 in Gyeongsang-bukdo Province. More than 3,000 houses were completely burned down, and significant damage was also reported to 30 national heritage sites and 2,000 agricultural facilities. In order to extinguish the remaining fires, the military deployed 600 soldiers and 49 helicopters on Sunday, and is also providing medical and other assistance. The government will now focus on helping those that have been affected by the massive wildfires. This includes providing temporary housing and other assistance for those who have been displaced. Also, the government will provide livelihood support, including lowering fees for health insurance premiums and costs for cell phone and internet and medical aid. Since the outbreak of the wildfires, approximately 10,000 volunteers have participated in recovery and support for the displaced. The government also announced on Sunday that it will push for a supplementary budget worth 10 trillion won, or $6.8 billion, which would also include budget for wildfire recovery. Some $37 million were also donated to disaster relief organizations in the hope that victims and the areas affected by the wildfires can recover quickly. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Well, now that the flames have been tamed, communities that have been brutally affected remain in shock, aware about the importance of finding a path forward, but unable to come to terms with the loss of lives and livelihoods. Our Song Yu-jin files this report.
Fires move fast, but the scars they leave behind run deep. In South Korea's Gyeongsang-bukdo Province, wildfires tore through entire communities, leaving heartbreak, destruction, and a long road to recovery. This is all that's left of the Seokbomyeon neighborhood in the province's Yeongnam-gun County.
So this is one of the regions that have been hit hardest by the wildfires that have been raging here in South Korea. And you can see the impact right here. So if you look at this building, you can see smoke still billowing from the roof, although there are no flames. And if you come over here, there's also this car that seems to have been completely burned down by the wildfire that hit this region. But it's not just here, because if you look over there, there are also trees that have been completely bare. Local residents here tell me that this area has been hit by a wildfire from a couple of days ago. And you can also see the impact right over there, because what seems to have been a building is now completely gone.
7 people from Seokbomyeon died trying to escape the flames. Every single fatality in the county came from here. Lee Sang-hak is the head of one of the villages of Seokbomyeon.
I had just gotten off work when I saw smoke everywhere on my way home. Something felt off. We could barely see a thing. And then, in just 5 seconds, it started raining fire. I rushed to spray water and told my daughter to get out of the house. There were some old ladies still inside. One couldn't walk, so I carried her out and got her into the car. My ribs are in bad shape now, but at the time, I didn't even feel them. No one in our village died, thankfully. but everything was burned.
The community is still in shock. Neighbors are checking in on one another, some discovering only now just how much they've lost.
그래. 아이고, 피해가 왜 없겠어, 이 사람아. 자네 집도 다 탔다.
그래. 우리 집 다 탔는 건 알고.
그래. 우리 집도 다 타고.
왜냐, 그 상무실은?
상무실도 저기 내 집 빼고 다 탔어.
왜냐?
우리 집도 다 탔지.
아이고.
지금도 연기가 나는데 뭐.
Their homes weren't the only things destroyed. Their farms, their tools, their way of life, all gone.
What am I supposed to do now? I don't even have a single farming tool left. If I found the person who caused this fire, I'd want to tear them apart.
It felt like helicopters were dropping fireballs because I could see fires here and then there. So I escaped in my car. I'm 72 and I've been living here since I was 8. I've never seen a fire like this in my lifetime.
Park Sunok has been running her magnolia berry farm for 2 decades. She is thankful that she is alive, but this question lingers in her mind. What's she going to do now?
I put everything into 2 warehouses, both worth about 80 million won. Now they're gone. My heart is still pounding. There's no electricity, no water, and nothing to eat. Our magnolia berries, completely burned.
Relief supplies are arriving. Food, water, and clothes. In neighboring Andong, thousands have evacuated to shelters like this city gymnasium.
I was a farmer. Now, I have nothing but my pension. We grew apples and magnolia berries. All of it burned. Everything's gone.
I never imagined something like this could happen to me. Only on TV, never here.
This disaster shelter offers tents, meals, bedding, and counseling for those overwhelmed by the loss.
We're providing breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Also, mental health support through counseling for residents who are feeling anxious and disoriented after losing their homes so suddenly.
And it's not just emotional wounds. Healing here means caring for both the mind and the body.
We're seeing a lot of respiratory symptoms, coughing, runny nose, phlegm, and headaches, as many here were exposed to smoke.
Once vital signs are checked,
머리 아프시니까 약은 좀 드릴게요. 어제랑 똑같은 걸로. 근데 지금 혈압도 높으시고 혈당도 높으셔가지고 이따 검사를 좀 해보셔야 될 것 같아요.
those in need of further care are guided to nearby hospitals for more specialized treatment. Relief services like these offer a critical lifeline, but they're temporary. But rebuilding an entire life from scratch takes time. The government has promised to go all out in support.
The government will do its utmost to provide emergency relief and all necessary administrative and financial support to help them return to their daily lives as quickly as possible.
The voices of these people who lived through what can only be described as apocalyptic, need to be heard now more than ever.
다른 거 안 받아. 김만 어떻게 해 좀. 아휴, 살다가 80평사 처음이시다. 나라에서 도와줘야 되지. 우리 힘으로는 될 수가 없어요. 뭐 맨몸으로 나왔는데 뭐.
From the ashes of Gyeongsang-buk-do province, a community fights to hold on to memories, to hope, and to each other. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스, 안동.
Meanwhile, in other news, a short-selling ban that went into effect in November 2023 has been lifted, with tougher measures in place to crack down on illegal transactions. Our Park Junan covers this lifting and the stock market's response on this Monday.
Starting Monday, South Korea resumed short selling on its stock market after a 17-month suspension. And for the first time in 5 years, the country is allowing short selling for all listed stocks. With investors now able to borrow and sell stocks before buying them back later, the market is seeing increased volatility, which has intensified amid falling global stock prices. The benchmark Kospi at around 1:30 p.m. briefly dropped below 2,480 points, declining over 3 percentage points compared to last Friday's market close of 2,557.98. At the market's close on Monday, 3:30 p.m. local time, the Kospi closed at 2,481.12, down 76.86 points, or 3% from last Friday's market close. Short selling involves investors borrowing stocks, selling them at the market price, and later repurchasing them, ideally at a lower price, to return to the lender.
That's what you have in a normal market, in any international market. If it goes too high, you have short sellers to stop it from going too high.
To create a safer and fairer stock trading environment and to facilitate the return of short selling, the Korea Exchange is implementing measures such as strengthened penalties for illegal short selling and increased monitoring of transaction activities. Additionally, those who borrow stocks must repay them within 90 days, with an extension of up to a year.
Well, the large complaint that the individual investors had was that larger companies were engaged in naked short selling. That means short selling without borrowed stocks on hand. And then I believe they have now databases for short selling transactions so that anybody can see that the transactions are done fairly rather than below the table. So sometimes.
Amid short-term market volatility, industry experts emphasize the long-term necessity of short selling in Korea, as it is expected to attract more foreign capital inflow, enhance liquidity, and help investors manage risks. Park Junan, Arirang News.
On the political front, will it or will it not announce its verdict on the president's impeachment this week? Now, that is the question facing the Constitutional Court as the wait continues for its ruling. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young touches upon the prospects ahead.
The Constitutional Court could issue a ruling in President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial this week, as deliberations are believed to have reached the final stage. According to legal experts familiar with the matter, the 8-member bench is now wrapping up its review of key grounds for Yoon's impeachment after more than a month of almost daily meetings, the longest the court has ever deliberated on a presidential case. Once each justice expresses their opinion, they're expected to draw up their collective decision before announcing the ruling date 2 to 3 days in advance. While it could be as early as this Thursday, if the bench schedules a Friday ruling in line with past presidential impeachments, April 4th and 11th are key dates to watch. But given the record deliberation period, observers say the verdict could take longer to be issued, as the justices may be sharply split in their opinions on whether or not President Yoon's martial law declaration warrants an impeachment. The court needs at least 6 votes to remove a president. If 3 or more justices are against impeachment, Yoon would be restored to office. At this point, April 18th is broadly considered the deadline for the bench, the date Justices Moon Young-bae and Lee Mi-sun retire. In 2017, the court dismissed President Park Geun-hye on a Friday before acting Chief Justice Lee Jung-mi stepped down the next Monday. But this time around, the 2 vacancies would leave only 6 justices on the bench, below the 7-member threshold required to deliver a ruling. Meanwhile, political tensions are escalating following the recent acquittal of opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung in one of his 5 criminal trials. As Lee currently leads polls for presidential hopefuls, the ruling People Power Party fears an early election could benefit the opposition leader, and is pushing the court to dismiss or reject Yoon's impeachment. On the other side, the DP is hardening its stance. Some lawmakers call for another motion to impeach acting President Han Duck-soo, despite the Constitutional Court's dismissal of their previous attempt, along with Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok. Other DP members are demanding the urgent appointment of a left-leaning Judge Ma Eun-hyuk to secure a 6-vote majority to impeach the president. As for public opinion, support for the 2 major parties are split evenly at 36%, with moderates caught between both political extremes. Yoon's immediate return, or the opposition parties' continued offensives against the incumbent government. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Myanmar is reeling in the aftermath of a devastating earthquake that is believed to have taken hundreds of lives thus far, as rescue and relief workers from international entities fly in to offer much-needed assistance. Our An Sung-jin reports.
Buildings have turned into rubble, houses buried in the ground. A rescue team pulls out a young child from a collapsed building in the city of Mandalay in Myanmar after a 7.7 magnitude earthquake hit the country on Friday. As aftershocks continue, the military regime estimates that at least 2,000 people are dead.
A very strong shaking started. Ground was slipping underfoot. The shaking lasted about a minute. When it ended, the walls of the palace and some other buildings were collapsing, and the cladding began to burst.
Experts say that the true death toll could rise far higher as search efforts continue, while there has been difficulty tracking the exact casualties in areas that are controlled by rebel groups. The U.S. Geological Survey says there is a 70% chance that the number of deaths will be above 10,000. Damage has been reported not only in Myanmar but neighboring countries including Thailand and nearby Chinese provinces. The international community, including ASEAN and the United Nations, has been ramping up relief efforts and foreign medical teams have been deployed. The WHO has declared its highest level of emergency while deploying emergency medical teams into Myanmar with trauma kits, medical supplies, and other essentials.
We need urgent assistance, especially for the children, who often suffer the most in these kinds of situations.
Myanmar's military government has also declared a state of emergency. Despite the destruction from the earthquake, the country's military junta continued its airstrikes, which the UN has described as completely outrageous and unacceptable. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And in related news, the Korean government has decided to dispatch a consul from its embassy in Yangon to Mandalay to aid Korean nationals affected by the earthquake. According to the Foreign Ministry, there are some 2,000 South Koreans residing in Myanmar, most of them in Yangon and about 70 in Mandalay. No Korean casualties have been reported thus far. Authorities here are also offering some $2 million worth of humanitarian assistance to Myanmar as part of relief support. U.S. President Donald Trump is ramping up his rhetoric on both Russia and Ukraine with regard to sealing a ceasefire deal. He's threatening heavier tariffs on Russian oil and vowing big problems, that is, for Kyiv if it backs away from its mineral deal with Washington. Our Park Hyun has more.
Amid the stalled progress on the Ukraine-Russia ceasefire, U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed strong dissatisfaction with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In an NBC interview on Sunday, Trump revealed that he was very angry after Putin criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's credibility. Trump also said that if Russia is found responsible for prolonging the conflict, he would impose secondary tariffs on Russian oil, ranging from 25% to 50%. He warned that countries purchasing Russian crude oil could face tariffs, signaling economic pressure as potential leverage in the ongoing conflict. Trump also had a message for Zelensky. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday, Trump criticized the Ukrainian leader for trying to back out of a rare earth metals agreement.
And I think Zelensky, by the way, I see he's trying to back out of the rare earth deal. And if he does that, he's got some problems, big problems. We made a deal on rare earth, and now he's saying, well, you know, I want to renegotiate the deal.
With U.S.-Ukraine negotiations now stalling, Russia has begun rare metals talks with Washington. On Monday, Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev confirmed that discussions were underway with several companies already expressing an interest. Last month, Putin underscored Russia's vast reserves, looking to position Moscow as a more stable supplier than Ukraine. As diplomatic efforts stall, the potential economic pressure from tariffs may become a crucial turning point in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Park Hyun, Arirang News.
Here in Seoul, Trade Minister An Deok-keun hosted his Japanese and Chinese counterparts this past Sunday for the first trilateral trade talks in over 5 years aimed at advancing regional partnership amid the threat of U.S. tariffs. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has more.
The trade ministers of South Korea, China and Japan met in Seoul for the first time in nearly 6 years and underscored the need for stronger economic ties and pledged to expand trade partnerships amid growing global uncertainties. At the Trilateral Economic and Trade Ministers meeting on Sunday, South Korea's Trade Minister An Duk-kun, China's Commerce Minister Wang Wentao, and Japan's Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry Muto Yoji emphasized the importance of a stable global trade system and vowed to strengthen cooperation in key economic sectors. The discussions came just days before the U.S. government's scheduled announcement of new reciprocal tariffs as the three nations navigate rising protectionist pressures. The meeting was seen as a strategic move to coordinate a response with all three nations facing similar concerns as major U.S. trade deficit partners and potential targets of tariffs. And as a result, the ministers aligned on the broader goal of preserving a stable international trade system. During the talks, the ministers reaffirmed their commitment to multilateral trade frameworks, supporting reforms at the World Trade Organization and expanding the regional comprehensive economic partnership to include new members. They also pledged to accelerate negotiations for a high-level trilateral free trade agreement.
It is necessary to strengthen the implementation of RCEP, in which all three countries have participated, and to create a framework for expanding trade cooperation among the three countries through Korea-China-Japan FTA negotiations.
While South Korea and China currently have an FTA in place, discussions on a three-way agreement have stalled due to differing economic conditions and national priorities. Beyond trade agreements, the ministers addressed broader economic concerns, committing to stabilizing supply chains and expanding cooperation in green and digital industries. 문혜련, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Greenland's new prime minister, sworn in on Friday, firmly rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's renewed interest in acquiring the Arctic territory, emphasizing Greenland's autonomy and self-determination. On Sunday local time, Greenland's Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, responded to President Trump's push to acquire Greenland. In a social media post, Nielsen stated, "Let me be clear, the United States will not get it. We do not belong to anyone else. We decide our own future." President Trump on Friday once again expressed confidence in the U.S. acquiring Greenland, describing it as 100% certain and citing national security interests. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's recent visit to Greenland's U.S. military base further raised tensions as Vance criticized Denmark's administration of Greenland, implying that the U.S. could offer better security and governance. In the Middle East, Hamas has accepted a new ceasefire proposal mediated by Egypt and Qatar. However, Israel has responded with a counteroffer. Hamas chief Khalil al-Hayya announced on Saturday that the Palestinian militant group has agreed to a ceasefire proposal from Egypt and Qatar, which includes the release of 5 hostages. In return, Israel would permit increased humanitarian aid into Gaza and a halt to hostilities. The deal also includes the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners by Israel. Israel has submitted a counter-proposal demanding the release of 11 living hostages and half of the deceased hostages in exchange for a 40-day ceasefire. Meanwhile, Israel is seeing large protests urging the government to prioritize negotiations for the hostages' release. In Europe, a space rocket launched by German startup Isar Aerospace on Sunday local time crashed approximately 40 seconds after takeoff from a spaceport in Norway. The uncrewed Spectrum rocket, 28 meters long, was designed to carry small and medium-sized satellites and marked Europe's first attempt at an orbital flight from the continent, excluding Russia. Despite the outcome, Isar Aerospace's CEO said the test was a great success, citing the collection of valuable data for future missions. The attempt reflects Europe's ambition to establish independent space launch capabilities. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Today, on the last day of March, the cold snap will gradually fade away. Following the weekend, it was chilly this morning. However, the weather warmed up quickly, and the temperature in Seoul rose to 14 degrees Celsius during the day. It will rise to 16 degrees in Seoul tomorrow. Currently, dry weather advisories are in place in inland areas. The atmosphere will become drier due to the warm westerly winds. Please be careful not to cause any fires in these dry conditions. Tomorrow morning, Daejeon will start off at 3 degrees, Gwangju and Daegu at 4 degrees. Daily highs will move up to around 50 to 17 degrees across the country, feeling much warmer than the weekend. There's more rain forecast for central parts of the country, Jeollabuk-do province and Gyeongsang-buk-do province on Wednesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching.